video is for anyone who believes that white privilege doesn't exist. I'm not sure that one video can change someone's mind, so my goal here is simply to plant some seeds. I'm in my seed planting era, if you will, because if I can use this account and the platform that I have to cause one white person to go, that's some good points, then it's worth it. So Lauren, I hope you and anyone else that thinks like you stays and listens. White privilege is being able to say, I'm not really a political person, which is something that I hear from white people often. Being able to say that is an absolute privilege that Black, Indigenous, other people of color, disabled folks, and other marginalized communities, white privilege is not having, but should be having, difficult conversations with your young children about race and racism and how there are people in the world who will hate them solely because they have a little bit more melanin in their skin. White privilege is growing up and being able to own dolls that look like you, seeing Disney princesses that look like you. And yes, that has started to shift in recent years, but there are Black people today that can testify that when they were growing up, there was only one type of doll that looked like them, if there was any at all. And it wasn't even until 2009, I was in college at the time, that we got our first Black Disney princess, and she was a frog. White privilege is getting pulled over by a cop, and the only thing that you're nervous about is getting a speeding ticket instead of worrying that you might say or do something that will get you killed.
Family, white people are now accepting that white privilege is real. They are not just talking about it, but they are breaking it down and giving practical examples where white privilege has worked for them. In the recent past and for the longest time, many white people have always questioned Black and other marginalized communities and told them that, you know what, we have equal opportunities. There is nothing like white privilege. But right now we are starting to see white people accept that they've been thriving with privilege, that most of the time they are getting opportunities because of the color of the skin, that they do not have to worry with policing and police brutality because of the privilege that comes with whiteness. So family, I want us to dive into this video and get to listen these coming from white individuals accepting and admitting that indeed they've been enjoying the white privilege and that has made them different in America. So family, I want you to watch these videos that I have compiled. Once they are done, we will get back and do a critical analysis about the same. Let's watch this video together, family.
This is just your friendly reminder that if you actually thought white privilege exists.
This video is for anyone who believes that white privilege doesn't exist. I'm not sure that one video can change someone's mind, so my goal here is simply to plant some seeds. I'm in my seed planting era, if you will, because if I can use this account and the platform that I have to cause one white person to go, that's some good points, then it's worth it. So Lauren, I hope you and anyone else that thinks like you stays and listens. White privilege is being able to say, I'm not really a political person, which is something that I hear from white people often. Being able to say that is an absolute privilege that Black, Indigenous, other people of color, disabled folks, and other marginalized communities simply do not have. White privilege is being able to walk into any cosmetic section and finding your shade of foundation. White privilege is not having, but should be having, difficult conversations with your young children about race and racism and how there are people in the world who will hate them solely because they have a little bit more melanin in their skin. White privilege is growing up and being able to own dolls that look like you, seeing Disney princesses that look like you. And yes, that has started to shift in recent years, but there are Black people today that can testify that when they were growing up, there was only one type of doll that looked like them, if there was any at all. And it wasn't even until 2009, I was in college at the time, that we got our first Black Disney princess, and she was a frog for most of the movie. White privilege is being able to walk into any hair salon and knowing without a shadow of a doubt you're going to be able to find a stylist who is competent in how to cut and style your texture of hair. White privilege is getting pulled over by a cop, and the only thing that you're nervous about is getting a speeding ticket instead of worrying that you might say or do something that will get you killed. White privilege is not being followed closely around in a store because employees have assumed, based on the color of your skin, that you might steal something. White privilege is being given the benefit of the doubt in a lot of different situations solely just because you look like you're a nice person. White privilege is being able to travel freely to pretty much anywhere in the world and being welcomed by the people that live there. White privilege is interviewing for a job and not having to worry about your natural hair or if the interviewer has already written you off just because of the color of your skin. And that's not even close to being being a complete list. Let me end with this. If you could choose to be black, would you? That's kind of a rhetorical question because any white person that answers yes is a liar. Because you see and are fully aware of how black people are historically and presently treated in this country and globally by white people and the systems that we uphold. And you know damn well you wouldn't choose that for yourself. That is white privilege. And it is absolutely sinister that in the year 2023, there are white people like you who are acting completely aloof to having said privilege. And that is white privilege.
Y'all gotta stop confusing wealth privilege with white privilege. The same excuse that I always hear from the white people that want to argue it is, I've had to work hard for everything that I've got, and I wasn't handed any money or a silver spoon, and I was poor, and blah 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 fucking blah. Guess what? I was poor too growing up. Guess what? I am still to this day in my 30s a struggling single mother. Stop using the fact that you've had to work your ass off for everything having anything to do with your skin color. There's a lot of us in this country, white, black, blue, purple, green, yellow, that don't have money. That's called the middle class and the lower class. The privilege that you got is something that you don't even realize and that you take for granted every time you step out the house. You can get pulled over and not have a care or worry in the world that you're going to get pew-pewed or unalived. You could get arrested for a DUI and not have a care in the world or worry that you're going to make it to the jail alive. You can walk around the mall or a grocery store or a convenience store and not be followed around based off of how you look. I will say some people that are heavily tatted get judged, but that's besides the point. You don't have to worry about your hair being a problem on whether or not you're going to get a job position. There's a certain bias and profiling that goes on a daily basis to non-white people. But because you're white, you will never understand what it feels like to be profiled for something you never thought you would get profiled for. Now, I will give some people the benefit of the doubt, right? Your life experiences and things that you are in proximity to are going to change your perception to things. But it's just diabolical to me that racist people or people who want to claim white privilege don't exist, I will stand 10 toes down believing that Jesus and a bunch of stories in the Bible are true and a bunch of people that you ain't never seen in your goddamn life without seeing it, right? But you can't grasp your head around the fact that the things that we're talking about exist even if you haven't seen it. You can't grasp your head around the fact that just because you ain't gone through it means it doesn't exist. And even when it exists, right, it's not something that you should feel defensive about. It's not something you can help, unfortunately. So the least you could do is be empathetic to it, right? The least you could do is recognize it and acknowledge it, right? The least you could do is not minimize other people's experiences and feelings about it, right? Like if stubborn was a race, I swear to God, it would be white people. It's not like you have to kiss people's feet and bow down. All people are saying is, hey, we just want you to understand, acknowledge, and empathize. And a lot of y'all don't have loved ones or people that you truly care about that you've watched go through shit. Because if you did, you would not have the same perception as some of us. And that's just a factual piece of information, whether you want to admit it to yourself or not. Out of sight, out of mind does not pertain to this concept. Like I said in part 1, some of y'all want to stay delusional. I'm not going to be delusional with you. I get that there's always going to be the exception to the rule, but you cannot sit here and act like millions and millions and millions of people are just pulling this shit out their ass. The quicker people start listening to comprehend and understand instead of listening to respond is when we'll finally make some progress. Y'all be safe out there.
So I'm out on patrol and I'm thinking a lot about privilege, and I want to talk to white people about that word and why I don't think it's scary, an insult, or some commentary on who I am as a person. See, white people, we see it through a white lens. We use it to describe one kind of person. Someone born into a life of wealth, ease. They don't have to worry about the basics, went to good schools, have nice houses. So when someone says to us, you're privileged, or use your privilege, it can feel like a judgment, an accusation even, that like you don't work hard, you don't struggle, your life's been easy. But for a person of color, there's not just one factor that makes a person privileged. Privilege is being able to walk around and just exist without needing to be hyper aware and constantly checking to see if you're safe. Being somewhere and not needing to ask, do they see me as a threat? Am I about to be hurt because of that? Women, I know you understand that feeling. Now imagine the threat is coming from everywhere. Privilege is not feeling an undertone of fear every single day. Privilege is being able to tune out the world as it burns down around you because it doesn't actually affect your daily life. Personally, I could tune out, binge terrible TV, do white girl yoga, and mimosa brunch till I die. I have the privilege to do that. These policies don't affect me. So why am I out here? Why am I asking others who look like me to show up and use their privilege and help right now? Because there are people who do not have that privilege. They're cornered and they're scared and they are begging us to help them. They're begging us. Because I do have power as a white woman in America. Even if I didn't do anything to earn that power, I have it and I get to decide how to use it. When someone says to me, use your privilege, I hear that as Katie, use your power. And I choose to use that power, that privilege to help people. If we just stay at home and do nothing, we are complicit in what's happening and whatever comes next. If we stay silent, if we tune out and pretend it all away, then we have used our privilege to terrorize, kidnap, and ultimately kill people, to take away the basic freedoms that make this America. I mean, even if she's broken, she's ours. I'm using my privilege right now because these policies don't target me. Not yet. Because right now, white women, we have power. We have a voice. It has not been taken from us. It is being taken from them. It is a privilege to be in a position to help people. If speaking up could save someone's life, would you do it? While I'm able, I'm going to use my privilege to help those with less power and less privilege than me. I'm asking you to think about how you will use yours.
Hey, Joe from Georgia. It is December the 4th. I just want to share a personal story. And here's the deal. Please don't stop watching the video now. It's going to take a couple of minutes to do this. But it's a life lesson for a lot of people to understand. I endured this life lesson, and I'd never even thought about it before. And it's got something to do with white male privilege. People want to say white male privilege doesn't exist. Folks, I'm just going to tell you it does. In 1982, I graduated from college. And back in the day when you graduated from college and you were looking for a job, you did a resume. You did it yourself usually. Or you got a professional resume writer. Well, me and 5 friends got together and we did our resumes and we got a total list of all these corporations that we were going to apply to. So we did. And back then, envelope, paper, in the mailbox to the prospective employers. And if they wanted to talk to you, they'd call and give you an interview. Well, a month goes by. All my friends at that time have already secured a job offer or multiple job offers. I didn't get one. As a matter of fact, I didn't even get an interview. And I was wondering if my resumes had got lost in the mail. Something had happened. Well, I decided I need to go to a professional resume writer. Maybe it's my resume. Well, I take it in, and it's actually a black woman who is the resume writer, and I give it to her. Within 5 seconds, she handed me back the resume. She said, I already know what your problem is. And I said, how could you know that fast? She said, it's your first name. You've got your first name on your resume. Well, my first name is Terrell. Now, in a lot of people, they pronounce it Terrell. Is probably 99% of people named Terrell are African American. Well, my parents had given me that name. So she handed it back to me. She said, just take your first name off, leave it as Joe Clark. And she said, you'll be fine. So what did I do? I redid the resumes, put them back in the envelope, sent them to the same 50 companies. Within 3 weeks, I had multiple interviews and multiple job offers. I'd also included a picture with every resume of myself. So there was no confusion of what I looked like. Now before, when the HR people were looking at it, they saw Terrell, which we pronounce it Terrell. They just got rid of my resume because they thought I was black. That's how they were doing their screening. So when people want to talk about DEI, DEI can exist so people can actually have an opportunity to show what they can do. Now, I was very well qualified to do my job, but I didn't even get an interview because they thought I was a black person. That's why I fight so hard for people in marginalized communities who they don't get that opportunity just because of their skin color, their sexual orientation. In mine, it was basic as a name. So that's why I am who I am in fighting for these people. It's important, folks, that we all understand everybody's got something to give. So if you would, if you've watched this all the way to the end, would you repost this and let people know it's as simple as a name on a piece of paper that makes up a decision for somebody to discriminate against certain people? It's actually another lesson of white male privilege, and it does exist.
So let me ask you, Karen, have you ever been pulled over for being white? Has your house been redlined? When you sold your house, did you get it appraised and then move everything out, then have to put white people's pictures in there and then have it appraised at a higher price? Have you ever had to have to talk with your children when they go to school? Were your great-grandparents enslaved? Were your grandparents on a will as property to hand over to a white man? You are literally the definition of white privilege by saying that. You think because you're poor that you don't have white privilege. And people like you are why we have a white supremacist in the White House. It's not about race, right? Let's talk about the immigration issue, since it's quote unquote not about race, because you just want to be ignorant. They've been here for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, never committed a felony. But Paul, I don't have a problem with them. I just want them here legally. Great, so it's about law and order. But you voted for a convicted felon, an adjudicated rapist, a guy who literally has dinner with white supremacist Nick Fuentes in his house. As for the unaliving of the Central Park Five, didn't rent to black people. Very fine people on both sides to white nationalists. Literally calls it insurrection, where officers have long-term disability. But somehow the brown people are the ones that need to get zip-tied and drag out of churches and schools and break their houses in and dislocate their shoulders, right? Somehow it's all about law and order, and they're sitting drinking out of toilets in concentration camp in Florida. But it's not racism, right? Totally not white supremacy. What are they? It's DEI and CRT. Can you give me the names of 50 people that were black that were not qualified as DEI hires? You couldn't give me one. Because people like you need to be the white victim. You're poor because you keep voting for Republicans that don't give a shit about you, Karen. Because you need to own the libs. Because you've been told that the liberals, and I'm not a liberal, I'm not a Democrat, I'm not a Republican, I think both parties suck. But you can't see that because you can't actually admit that you have white privilege. You instead pull out the white victim card. And I hope that where we are in this country, we can actually see that white supremacy is the problem. And people like you will wake up and admit that that's why we're here. Because you just couldn't stomach the most qualified presidential candidate in the history of our country, a black woman. And while you're at it, why don't you ask yourself, in 249 years, when 50% of our country are women, why we've never had a woman president? Or do you just want to keep buying into the male patriarchy? Good luck with that white privilege, Karen. Keep using that card. Hopefully it doesn't wear out the stripe pretty soon.
Happy Tuesday morning. I'm going to talk about white privilege today. And some examples that I've seen recently, and some personal examples that I've had over the years with law enforcement. And conceptually, you know, people get really bent out of shape. People who look like me get really bent out of shape when you bring up the phrase white privilege. And they say it doesn't exist, it's not a real thing. It's an absolute real thing. And you can look at the protests that we've seen over the course of this year, since Election Day, since Inauguration Day, and you compare the response to law enforcement to the protests that we've seen that this year have been comprised, those protests have been comprised almost exclusively of white people. We haven't seen the militarized response on the part of law enforcement. We haven't, that's certainly not the response that we saw in the summer of 2020 in response to the Black Lives Matter protests. And specifically, what I observed this past Saturday during the No Kings protest is that when I marched in the protest, my brother and I both marched together in the protest in San Francisco, I saw one motorcycle police officer about an hour before the protest was scheduled to start, and he was helping to direct traffic. along the entire protest route from Dolores Park up Dolores Street to Market Street, down Market Street to Van Ness Street, Van Ness Avenue, up Van Ness, across Grove to Civic Center. Along that entire route, I did not see one single police officer at all. And the only other police officers that I saw that day were, after the march was over, there were a couple of motorcycle cops who were parked up against the Bill Graham Civic Auditorium looking at their phones. And you know, you compare these protests to the Black Lives Matter protests in 2020, the police response, the law enforcement response. I mean, I saw multiple videos, live streams of protests during the summer of 2020, where during the day police officers were mingling with protesters, taking photos with them, taking photos of them all like taking a knee. And then when we got close to dusk, those same officers would put their riot gear on and go to town and cause violence and cause injuries. And that's one observation. And that was quite obvious to me on this past Saturday. So what is white privilege? I mean, it can have a lot of different definitions in a lot of different contexts. But to me, it simply means that the color of my skin has never made my life more difficult. The color of my skin has never made specific instances or circumstances in my life more difficult or more dangerous. As well as there have been specific instances and circumstances in my life where I firmly believe that the color of my skin has worked to my benefit in a way that it would not happen for people who don't look like me. And you know, in 2020, I had been a gun owner when I lived in Ohio. I moved out here about 25 years ago. I hadn't owned any guns while I lived in San Francisco or California. In 2020, I decided it was time to get some firearms again. And two of the purchases that I made, I bought a very, very high-end, expensive AR-15 type rifle, and I bought a top-of-the-line optic to go on top of that. It's another version of a scope. I have a red dot optic where I look through that. There's a red dot. I put the red dot on the target that I'm shooting at the range, and it helps you hit your target. That type of firearm, I have the civilian version. It's a weapon that is issued to special forces in the United States military. It's a weapon that's commonly owned by law enforcement in the United States. And the optic that I purchased is also very commonly used by law enforcement in the United States. Each of those items came with a sticker. And I put those two stickers on the bottom lower left corner of the rear window on my car, advertising that I am a gun owner and these are two of the things that I own. Since doing that, I've been pulled over 3 or 4 times for, mainly for things like speeding on Highway 5, either going to or coming from Los Angeles. In 2 or 3 of those instances where I was very clearly speeding by a significant amount, the CHP troopers, it was the same thing each time. They would come up, I'd have my license, registration, proof of insurance ready. They'd take that information from me, and they'd be like, hey, I noticed your stickers. Do you have any firearms in your vehicle today? And I would always say, like, nope, today's not a range day. Nothing in the car. No request that I step out of the vehicle, no request to search my vehicle, no demand that I open up the back of my car for them to look. Then they would go run my information. They would come back. They would see that I don't have any warrants, haven't had any moving violations in a long time. We would have a pleasant conversation about firearms, and then they would give me a warning and I would leave. And that was that. I think those interactions would have gone dramatically differently if I was not a white man. There was one time that I was pulled over on my way home from the gun range, and I told the officer, I have 2 handguns in the back of my car. my ammo bags on the front seat. I'm coming home from the gun range. And again, didn't put his hand on his gun, didn't draw his weapon, didn't point his weapon at me, didn't demand that I get out of the vehicle, didn't demand that I open up the back of my car and show him the guns, which I offered to do. And again, I got a warning and was sent on my way. And he didn't call for backup. There was none of that kind of stuff. There was no escalation of any kind. I'm not licensed to carry a firearm in the state of California. I had 2 of them in my vehicle that day. I was transporting them in a manner that was consistent with California law, but the officer involved in that stop did nothing to escalate it. Now I want to talk about a young man named Philando Castile, a 32-year-old African-American man who was fatally shot during a traffic stop outside of St. Paul, Minnesota on July 6, 2016. He's 32 years old. He was with his girlfriend and her 4-year-old daughter. Officers pulled him over because he had a broken brake light. One of the officers had previously radioed that he was going to pull over this car. The 2 occupants just looked like people that were involved in a robbery. The driver looks like one of our suspects. When they pulled him over, he said, "Officer, I am carrying a handgun. I am licensed to carry a handgun." The officer, whose last name was Yanez, said, "Well, don't reach for it." He was like, "I'm not reaching for it." The officer said, "Don't pull it out." And Philando said, "I'm not pulling it out." And the officer said, "Don't pull it out," and then fired 7 shots at Philando Castile. He hit him 5 times, twice in the heart. His girlfriend said, "You just killed my boyfriend." She started live streaming on Facebook. Mr. Castile died of his injuries despite lawfully carrying a handgun and having a license or permit to do that, which he immediately informed the officers, the officer who came up to his window. And the officer shot and killed him anyway. Even though he didn't reach for his gun, the officer never saw his gun, but Philando Castile was black. That officer was charged with second-degree manslaughter, 2 counts of dangerous discharge of a firearm, and he was acquitted by a jury following a jury trial. And so people who think that white privilege is not real, I would like you to watch this video. Some of the information here is anecdotal from my own personal experiences, obviously. But that's how those are some of the circumstances of how I have benefited from being a white man and a gun owner in the United States, even when interacting with law enforcement, that clearly those types of interactions would go on a different way if I was not a white man, and I firmly believe that.
Family, if you're a keen from my videos in the last week and a half, you'll notice one thing in common: a group of white people who are ready to say nothing but the truth. We've seen white people accept the atrocities they've caused black communities in America. Today in this video, you've seen white people talk about the white privilege they've been enjoying in America. Many white supremacists are always not ready to acknowledge the fact that they have started a race earlier than black people, that they are privileged people. Many of them do not like to accept that. But this specific group of people have really told us and have accepted that indeed they are enjoying white privileges in America. And they've given out practical examples. White privilege is not having difficult conversation with your children about race, racism, and how people will hate them because they have melanin in their skin. As a white person, you do not have such conversations with your kid. These are normal conversations in black families. You must raise your child to know why he or she is being hated because of having melanin in her skin. You have to explain to your kid why they can be easily shot down, by police officers in cold blood in the streets. You have to explain to your kid why they are taken as minorities and why they should expect to be discriminated by white people. Those are privileges that white parents that white parents actually have. They do not have to worry what they'll tell their kids about racism and about being black. That's a privilege with itself. Another privilege this lady has spoken about uh, is growing up and being able to own dolls that look like you. Family, the other day, I have this black American friend of mine. We were in an Uber. Then all of a sudden on traffic, there were these people who sell, in Africa, there are hawkers who sell even on roads. Once cars are not moving, somebody comes and sells their products. So there's this guy who came with a black doll. This amazed our black American brother. And he saw that and said, yo, I want to get this ASAP. Because when we go to America, you rarely find a black doll. Even here in Africa, you rarely find that because the white supremacists made us think that anything beautiful is white, the white doll. So it's a privilege that they do not have. It's actually a privilege that they own dolls, that look like them. White privilege is being pulled over by a cop, and the only thing you're nervous about is getting a speeding ticket, not about worrying about what you say or whatever you do can make you get killed. That is a struggle that black people go through each and every day in America. They ask themselves questions once they are told to stop by traffic officers. If they move their arms, they can be easily shot because they are told that they are reaching for an arm. That is not something that white people have to worry about in America. The only thing they worry about in this case is getting a speeding ticket. They do not have to worry about what they say or what they do in the process. White privilege is not being followed in a store because people think you about to steal something. They just trust you. But sometimes this color of ours, when somebody sees you enter a store, they think you want to steal something or you cannot afford to buy something in that store. That is privilege. White people are also accepting that white privilege is being able to travel all over the world and get welcomed. You do not worry. You'll be accepted because of the color of your skin. White people admitting they got job call back or warrant profile. We've seen this person in the video saying very, very well that he got an opportunity because he is white. In his CV, he had to put a photo of himself, and immediately he did that, he got the opportunity. Does it mean that he was actually worthy to get that opportunity? Or is it because he proved that the color of his skin was white? He said that his name is close to blackness. The moment he only used two of his names and put a photo, of him being white, he got numerous opportunities that he did not get before, he put the photo and had to use the two names. That just shows us how black people struggle to get these opportunities in America, because immediately the white guy, as is mentioned in the video, changed his CV. He was able to get multiple opportunities that he did not get before he clarified certain things like color of skin and the name, linking it, to whiteness. So they are ahead in jobs. That just shows us that is also white privilege. That's exactly it. Privilege doesn't mean your life is perfect. It means the systems give you advantages you don't even think about. Like walking in a store and not getting followed, like applying for a job and your name doesn't raise a red flag. That's not luck. That's privilege backed into society. We can talk about this in the housing and wealth gap. Boom, generational wealth. This is how privilege works quietly. While black families were locked out of home loans through redlining, white families are building equity that got passed down. That's not something you can't just work harder to catch up with. There's already a gap. They were getting housing while black people did not get the same opportunities. I actually respect white folks for speaking up, because truth is, the first step in fixing a problem is admitting it exists. When I see these white folks admitting openly that white privilege exists, I just give them a lot of respect. It shut down a hole. It's all in your head. Argument, if even they can see it, you can't deny it anymore. So here's a real question now. If privilege exists, what are people gonna do about it? Are we just gonna acknowledge it and move on? Or are we gonna push for equity, for fairness, and for actual change? Because knowing is one thing, but action, that's where the real power is. Family, let me know in the comment section down below what you think about this episode. Just let me know, if you're a white person or a black person, how would you explain how you've gotten to see privilege, in American communities. Family, I'd also request in a special way that you do consider subscribing to the channel. We are currently on the road to 50,000 subscribers, and fam, we can never achieve this milestone if you all do not subscribe and share this video with your families and friends. The goal of the channel has always been to talk about black stories, black history, black empowerment, and tell black stories the black way. Because if we give the white supremacists an opportunity to tell our stories are often whitewashed. Thank you guys, and see you all in our next episode. Kindly do consider subscribing, man. Goodbye for now.